books, reading and thinking, thinking and reading, sometimes reading out loud, sometimes thinking out loud. At dusk, when he returned home, he went straight to his mountain and to his newfound friend, solitude. His passion for Christianity boiled his blood for a while. The sense of superiority, the feeling of peace and harmony lasted until the day he took me to the movies. It was my first visit to any movie theater, let alone the very Pahlavi Shiraz University Theater. At the entrance, we waited for our cousins to join us. The two brothers were the recent talk of family and relatives. Not only were they popular because they were tall and good-looking, they were also well-turned-out boys who studied chemical engineering at one of the most prominent universities in the nation. They were only in the first and second year of their studies, but already the relatives addressed them as Mr. Mohandes, Mr. Engineer. A few minutes later, they arrived with a group of their friends and friends of friends. These were boys much older than Muhammad, but he was blessed with the gift of blending in so that nothing he did would surprise anyone who knew him, let alone bringing his 8-year-old sister with him. Maybe it was because of his curse and blessing of being born the fifth of 7 boys, which made him take quickly to both younger and older groups. Bibi believed that an old man's soul possessed his small young body, because even when he was a small boy, she said, he had a head and a mind that ached to know the mysteries of this world. During the movie, which was called Fahrenheit 451, I wiggled so much that he warned me that if I did not stop moving, it would be the last time I could go to any movies with him. I couldn't see too well because the man in front of me had a big head with pushed-up hair. I tried to tell Mohammed, but every time I looked his way, I found him deeply absorbed in the film. With his famous philosophical habit of squeezing his chin between his index finger and thumb, he gazed at the screen, his mouth as always half open. I sometimes reached out to close his lips, a gesture he did not find amusing, and that has even earned me a smack on the back of my hand. I was too young to understand most of the movie, but I remember I kept asking my brother why the firemen were burning the books. He whispered to me that in that city, books were banned and people were not allowed to read them. That's why people had to run away and hide in the woods, where they memorized entire books so that they come back to the city and retell the stories they knew by heart. They have become the book themselves, he told me in awe. Later that night, as Muhammad and I waited for a taxi, our cousin Nasser called out to him. He whispered something in Muhammad's ear and gave him a small packet, which he shoved quickly into the inner pocket of his jacket. "What's that?" I asked once Nasser was gone. "Do you have to know everything?" he said coldly. I did not say another word, but a few moments later, disturbed by my silence, he said in a very low voice, "It's just a book. I'll let you read it if you promise not to tell anyone." I nodded mutely. "It's a banned book," he whispered. "Do you think the firemen would burn it if they find it?" I said, startled. He looked at me for a moment. "You haven't heard a word of what I just said. Do you hear me?" He bent over and put his hands on my shoulders. "You do not talk to anyone, no one, not even Bibi, without what I just told you. Promise me." A sudden look flashed in his face. There was something in the tone of his voice which frightened me. "Not even Bibi?" I murmured. "Not even Bibi. Tell me that you understand." I nodded again. Since that day, Muhammad extended his range of reading. He talked about the Dark Ages and how the church had suppressed people all over Europe. When he found out that the church in the past had collected money from the poor and in the name of religion, instead of helping them, and had built bigger churches, he was disenchanted. As he read on, he shared his new discovery, the Crusades, where the Christians had murdered thousands and thousands of Muslims. The day of this one discovery, I saw another kind of flicker in his eyes. He wiped off his glasses and told me that he ought to study Islam. After all, it was his fate, and he did not know a thing about it. He began with Nahjul Balagha, the instructions written by Imam Ali to guide Muslim devotees to follow in daily life. Then he started reading the translated version of the Holy Quran so he could understand the verses in Farsi rather than in Arabic. Soon he was reading book after book on Islam. One night he entered Bibi's room and asked her to wake him before sunrise. In that milky dawn, I heard my brother, as he faced the direction of the house of God, responding to the muazzin's call for dawn's prayers. Allahu Akbar. God is supreme, the Lord of the universe. I bow to you, you the one, the most merciful, compassionate of all. From that day on, I could not imagine another day passing in which he would miss his daily 5 times prayers. That year and in years to come, he fasted the entire month of Ramadan. It was the holy month and people must give charity, he said. To Mother's astonishment, he went to the neighbors' houses, gathered food and clothing, and hauled them on the back of his bike to the God-forsaken people of Halabiabad in the shanty town. In his room, he took off the posters of the Chinese dragon and pinned up a large poster of a black man he called Brother Malcolm X. Islam is the religion of equality. It fights poverty, frees the slaves, and empowers the poor and the deprived, he announced to the entire family. His voice had a new ring to it. Ali cautioned Mother, but what she heard was the changing voice of her 14-year-old son. Like any of his other fascinations, this too will pass. It will only mesmerize him for a short while, she said calmly, and went about her chores.